Hey everyone, in the previous section, we saw how we can create the Ionic application and how we can serve it on the browser. In this one, section 2, we will talk about application state management with MobX. Let's get started. So first of all, we'll talk about the introduction to MobX and we'll discuss its key features. So let's go through MobX key concepts one by one. We have actions in MobX, we have store, we have computed values, and we have reactions. And these are the basic pillars and basic concepts of MobX. So what are actions? Actions are different events which are invoked by the UI or the component. So for instance, if you clicked a button, there will be an action which will be dispatched. Actions are the only things which can change the state of the application. So if we are talking about state management in MobX, remember that the only things which should update the state of the application should be actions. It is something optional, which means that there may be cases where you may be updating the state without actions, but it is recommended that you use actions only for updating the state because it makes it more predictable. And actions may have side effects too. So we will discuss what are the side effects and how they are created or how they can be created. So let's talk about store. Store is the actual thing which contains the overall state. So the state is managed through having a store. It could contain references, objects, arrays, and whatnot. State should not be containing any redundant data or derived properties. For instance, if you have a user object and you have name, age, address, and other information within the user object, there should not be any derived property in the user state, maybe saying username. So if you already have the username in the user object, you should not create another property naming username because that will be redundant. We can just fetch the values from the user object. And the state is basically an observable and it is minimally defined. So it should not contain any heavy processing or data manipulation. It is just an object or just a collection of different things in the state which can be observed using an observable to different components. Now let's talk about computed values and what are they. So the computed values are the derived values. Remember I just said that store should not be containing any derived property or the state should not contain it. But the computed values are the derived properties. So for instance, if you need to fetch out the addresses of the user and the user state contains an array of addresses, you can simply create a computed value which fetches the addresses out of the user state. So these are very flexible and we are also going to see how important they are. So one cool thing about computed values is that they are only updated when the relevant properties in the state are changed. For instance, if you have user addresses. So if you have an array of addresses under the user state, whenever the user is updated, the computed value for the addresses will be updated. But let's say if you had another object in the state, let's say admin, if the admin is updated in the state, the addresses of the user or the computed value of user addresses will not be updated because they are not relevant. So that is really cool and we only update the computed values when the relevant things are updated. Now let's talk about reactions. Reactions are pretty cool. They are kind of like computed values but a bit different. So instead of producing a new value like computed values, reaction produces side effects. So computed value provides a value that we can use on the UI, but this is just a side effect. And let's see what a side effect is. So a side effect can be a network request. It could be processing different data or patching DOM values. So it doesn't essentially provide you a value to use in the UI, but it does some work which is kind of not related to UI, but it could be something like data processing. It could initiate a network request which is not related to the state directly.